January 1943, the Solomon Islands before sunrise. Warm rain drifts sideways across the airstrip, carried by a restless tropical wind. Palm fronds shudder and hiss in the darkness. The smell of wet earth, fuel, and salt hangs thick in the air. Somewhere beyond the tree line, the Pacific breathes in slow, heavy swells. Above the island, clouds sit low and swollen, bruised purple and black, promising another violent storm. On the ground, engines cough, then fall silent again. In this half-light, speed itself is waiting. For Japanese naval aviators, this sky had long been an ally. The tropics were supposed to be their shield. Heavy rain, sudden squalls, and towering clouds had always favored pilots raised on discipline, patience, and experience. American aircraft were believed to be powerful but crude, fast in clear skies, yet clumsy when the weather turned hostile. Tropical storms, Japanese planners believed, would slow the enemy, scatter formations, and protect vital bases across the vast Pacific. That belief had survived the early months of war, reinforced by victories earned through surprise and superior training. But by 1943, something new was arriving in these skies, and it did not slow down when the storms came. The appearance of the F-4U Corsair marked a turning point not only in aerial combat, but in the psychology of the Pacific War. Designed with a massive engine and an unmistakable bent wing, the Corsair was born from American industrial ambition. It was fast, brutally powerful, and engineered to perform where earlier aircraft faltered. By the time it reached frontline units, the United States had learned from early defeats. Factories were no longer improvising. They were refining. Assembly lines stretched endlessly across the mainland, feeding the Pacific with machines built in numbers Japan could not match. The Corsair was not just another fighter. It was a statement. Japanese pilots entered 1943 expecting a familiar rhythm of combat. They expected American fighters to avoid storms, to climb cautiously, to disengage when visibility collapsed. Instead, they encountered something deeply unsettling. Corsairs did not hesitate. They surged through rain curtains and cloud banks, engines roaring with a deep, relentless growl that cut through thunder and wind. Where Japanese aircraft struggled to maintain speed in turbulent air, the Corsair seemed to thrive, its sheer power forcing the sky itself to yield. Combat reports from Japanese units began to reflect this shock. Pilots wrote of American fighters appearing suddenly out of storm clouds, diving with terrifying velocity, firing once, and vanishing again into rain and mist. The speed was not just physical, it was psychological. Encounters unfolded too quickly to react. Traditional tactics based on maneuver and endurance failed against an aircraft that could dictate when and how a fight began and ended. One Japanese naval intelligence summary from mid-1943 noted with concern that American fighters were no longer bound by weather conditions once thought unfavorable. The Corsair's advantage was rooted in engineering. Its Pratt & Whitney R2800 double WASP engine produced more than 2,000 horsepower, giving the aircraft extraordinary acceleration and climb. In tropical air, dense with moisture and heat, where engines often lost efficiency, the Corsair retained performance that stunned its opponents. American pilots learned to use speed as both shield and weapon, attacking from above, disengaging at will, and refusing prolonged dogfights that favored lighter Japanese fighters. For Japanese airmen trained in the elegance of the Zero, this was a bitter revelation. The Zero had been designed for range and maneuverability, not raw power. It excelled in controlled engagements where skill and patience mattered. Against the Corsair, those virtues felt suddenly fragile. Storms that once promised concealment now became avenues of attack. Clouds that once hid aircraft now concealed American speed. The transformation was not merely tactical, it was ideological. Japanese aviation doctrine had long emphasized the spirit of the pilot over the machine. Training manuals stressed discipline, bravery, and sacrifice. But the Corsair represented a different philosophy. It embodied American faith in industrial strength and overwhelming capability in building machines so powerful that individual limitations mattered less. The sound of its engine became a recurring symbol in Japanese accounts, a deep, unbroken thunder that seemed to defy weather, distance, and exhaustion. American pilots, many barely out of training, flew into storms with confidence rooted not in personal mastery but in trust. Trust in their aircraft, in logistics, in a system that replaced losses and improved designs continuously. Maintenance crews worked under rain-soaked tarps, parts arriving by ship and plane in endless supply. Ammunition, fuel, spare engines, abundance flowed across the Pacific like a tide that never receded. Japanese pilots noticed this too. Battles were followed by more battles, always against fresh aircraft, always with the same relentless speed. By late 1943, the impact was undeniable. Japanese commanders reported rising pilot fatigue and declining morale. Storms no longer brought relief. They brought fear. Every cloud bank carried the possibility of sudden attack. Every rumble of thunder risked being mistaken for the approach of American fighters. The psychological strain was profound. Speed, once admired, became something to dread. Historical records from both sides confirm this shift. U.S. Navy after-action reports highlighted the Corsairs' effectiveness in poor weather, noting its ability to maintain combat operations when other aircraft were grounded. Japanese documents captured by Allied intelligence spoke of increasing difficulty countering American fighters and an urgent need for new tactics that never fully materialized. Time was against Japan. Factories could not keep pace. Fuel shortages, limited training. Experienced pilots were irreplaceable. The Corsair thus became more than a weapon. It became a sound, the steady, rising roar of an engine cutting through rain, a reminder that American power did not pause for storms or seasons. That sound echoed across island chains from the Solomons to the Philippines, reshaping the expectations of everyone who heard it. In the final months of the war, Japanese pilots faced skies filled with aircraft faster and more numerous than anything imagined in 1941. Tropical storms still came, violent and unpredictable, but they no longer belonged to Japan alone. The Americans had claimed them too, bending weather into another operational advantage. In the end, the story of the Corsair in tropical storms is a story of transformation. It marks the moment when belief in individual mastery yielded to the reality of industrial warfare. It reveals how speed sustained by abundance can alter not only battles but minds. The Pacific skies became a place where nature itself seemed overwhelmed, where rain and wind could not slow the advance of a nation built on production and persistence. Long after the engines fell silent, the lesson remained. Freedom in this war arrived not gently, but with overwhelming force.